Hey, check out my first mining rig. I got one GPU here that I got off of eBay for $1,200, and it's got a pretty light on it, and it's awesome, man. And man, I'm rocking the world here. I'm getting like 22 megabyte hashes and hash bytes or hash pipe or whatever they're called, man. This is MHS. So I'm getting 22 and yeah, and I've got this GPU thing, and yeah, man, and I got 2 monitors, because you know 2 monitors is better than 1 monitor. So yeah, so I got that going, and check it out, man. I'm keeping it cool. I got my 1 GPU, and yeah, I got fans, man. A lot of fans, man. I'm keeping this thing nice and cool. So yeah, so this is my first build, and I'm totally stoked, man. Totally stoked. It's just dope, you know, dope as could be. So yeah.
Hi, Steve here. And yeah, I gotta admit, I remember how excited I was when I got my first rig. Well, here it is several months later, and I've learned a few things, and I wanted to kind of share them with you. You know, when you put your videos up on YouTube, you get a lot of constructive criticism, which is great. You get a lot of nonsense hate comments. I don't really care about those, but you know what, every once in a while you get some really, really good nuggets. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that I did wrong in my first rig, save you from making the same mistakes. So number one, when I first started, I knew not to use Molex plugs to run the risers. You know, it's weird when it comes to power options for your risers. I've heard some people say that Molex is better. I've heard some people say that SATA is better. Based on the reading that I did, I noticed that most people were saying to use SATA. So I was hooking up 2 risers to each of the SATA cables, which have a max of 3 or 4, but I was only using 2, and I thought that I was fine. And one of the pieces of criticism that I got coming out of the gate was to not use them at all, but to use a 6-pin to 6-pin connector, as shown here. And I just want to let you know that I thought this was a really, really good recommendation, knowing that I'm taking advantage of using the best connections possible to avoid fire or any harm to the rig or the house. Another important thing that I learned, and yes, this is embarrassing, but you know, beginners are going to make mistakes. I actually had my fans on the wrong side of the GPUs. And within 24 hours of posting my very first video, somebody pointed out to me that my fans were on the wrong side. And I flipped my fans around, and the cooling went from decent to really, really good. And I'm so glad that that person had pointed that out to me. It was a tremendous help. And you know, once again, had I not posted on YouTube, I probably would not have known about that. Number 3 is BIOS modding your GPUs, and the proper way of BIOS modding your GPUs. When I first started, I knew about BIOS modding my GPUs, and I went out to a website and I used their mod, and of course it bricked the GPU, and I spent the better part of 3 or 4 hours actually having to boot into DOS and going through a nightmare to basically unbrick that GPU. So I learned the proper way to BIOS mod the GPUs, and I'm going to make a video about that, and I'll put a link in the description, but obviously that video is going to come after this one. So that's kind of an important one. The next thing was cooling. Kind of made fun of myself here with all these fans. I thought the more fans, the better, especially when I got it to 8, 10, 12 GPUs. I ended up learning that it's not necessarily how many fans you have, but getting the heat out. You've got to evacuate the heat in the room. This room at one point was 90 degrees, and I had 4 fans going. It was just basically recirculating 90-degree heat. And it wasn't until I read somewhere, instead of having the fan in the window blowing more in, I needed to evacuate some of that heat. So instead of having 30 million fans, make sure you're getting rid of the heat that's in the room, trying to keep the room temperature a little bit cooler. The next thing I learned is something that I knew going in, but I underestimated it, and that is electricity. Your common household circuit is a 15 amp circuit, which means that all the circuits in this room are good up to about 1800 watts. So once you start stacking on the GPUs, you're going to blow that circuit. And then you're going to be running cords into the neighboring rooms, which may or may not piss off your significant other. At one point before I had the electrician come in, I actually had the 15 amp breaker in here, completely tapped out, one going down the hall into the bedrooms and one going down the hall into a bathroom. So at this point, this room has several dedicated 20 amp circuits, but yeah, it did cost a good amount of money to have the electrician come out and basically rewire everything. So there are things that you can't even conceive to think about when you first start, especially if you decide to go big. And when I say go big, I'm thinking probably three or more rigs, even 2 stacks of 8. Really heated up the room, and that's when I ended up getting the tent. The tent has been a tremendous blessing in terms of keeping this room nice and comfortable and keeping everything cool. I feel like I can go probably 4 or 5 rigs in that tent and still keep everything at the temperatures that I want to keep them. So from a cooling standpoint, the tent, the ductwork, the wood for the windows, I mean, all of this stuff adds up. Another important thing that I learned was undervolting the GPUs so that they're not pulling as many watts, which will obviously save at the end of the month when the electric bill comes. So those are the main things. There's probably others that I've just not coming to mind right now, but you know, my whole goal with this channel is to share with you the lessons that I've learned. I am no pro at this. I'm figuring this out as I go along, reading, taking notes from other people, getting constructive criticism from my own videos. And that's really the reason why I put my videos out, is because people say, hey, you know, you're dummy, you're doing this wrong, or you're doing that wrong, or hey, if you just put this here, you'd be able to do a little bit better. So anyhow, hopefully you found this helpful. I hope so. If you found value in the video, please like, comment, subscribe. And if you have any questions about the gear that I'm using, look in the description below, or I've got links to all the stuff that I'm currently using. So anyhow, this is Steve signing off till the next video. Thanks for watching.